The death of Pope Benedict XVI over the weekend has rocked the Catholic community. Benedict's time serving as Pope can be defined by a staunch advocacy for a return to traditional Catholicism, which included his elevation of the traditional Latin Mass. Now, as Catholics around the world mourn the late Pope's passing, his body will lie in state at the Vatican until his historic funeral on Thursday morning in Rome. Joining me now to discuss is author of the book 100 Ways John Paul II Changed the World, Patrick Novecosky. Patrick, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Jen.
You know, Pope Benedict meant so much to so many people. Let's talk a little bit about his world-changing collaboration with Pope John Paul II, who I understand you had the blessing to meet on a number of occasions. Can you elaborate on that collaboration between the two of them?
Yeah, absolutely. They were both fathers of the Second Vatican Council in the mid-1960s. Both of them were very instrumental in some of the documents that came out of the Second Vatican Council, but they didn't meet there. They were both very young. Ratzinger was just a young theologian, and John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła, was a young bishop. They didn't meet at the Second Vatican Council, but they met after Paul VI died in 1978. They got together and they were in the conclave that elected John Paul I and came together about 2 months later and elected John Paul II. John Paul II really took him under his wing. He was a young bishop in Munich. Cardinal Ratzinger was, and Pope John Paul II saw something really genius in this man. He saw a potential collaborator and invited him to join him at the Vatican, which he did in 1982. They worked together for 23 years and changed the world together.
Wow. And, you know, Pope Benedict, he also set several precedents during his 8-year pontificate. What precedent stands out the most in your mind, Patrick?
Yeah, I think he was very proactive in dealing with sexual predators in the Catholic Church. Even under John Paul II, he convinced the Holy Father to allow the Vatican, essentially Cardinal Ratzinger, just before he became Pope, to deal with pedophile priests and to deal with them rather than having the bishops in the individual dioceses deal with it. He saw it as such a problem, and he kind of worked on that throughout his pontificate. He also surprised a lot of people. You know, they saw him as either a scholar, a professor, a very shy man. There was also this contradictory idea that he was vicious, that he was God's Rottweiler or something like that. But he really wasn't. He was a very gentle soul who he kind of really stepped and grew into the role as Pope. I don't think he really wanted to be Pope, but he saw it as his role in Providence to lead the church for 8 years until he knew that it wasn't anymore. He resigned in 2013, first Pope in 600 years to step away from the role.
It's incredible. And we'll, of course, be looking to Thursday when his funeral will take place, Thursday morning in Rome. Pope Francis will be presiding over that funeral. It's going to be the first time we've seen this in history. What do you anticipate to see from this historic event?
I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think it's really remarkable that it's been 44 years and we've only had one papal funeral in 44 years, that of John Paul II, where over 1 million people came to Rome to pay the respects to the Pope that led the church for 26 years. I think we're going to see something very similar. I think there's great affection for Pope Benedict still, and I think that permeates the hearts of most faithful Catholics. You know, he expanded the use of the Latin Mass, and that endeared him to so many, particularly young people who are gravitating toward the Latin Mass, that they just find such reverence in it and such beauty and such depth and history that it's really sparked something in young Catholics. So they love him for that.
Well, let me ask you this. We're going to see, obviously, thousands of people going to Rome to mourn Pope Benedict. What does that signify to you about his impact on the world?
Yeah, he moved hearts. You know, I remember hearing him speaking, and I could just hear the gentleness in his voice, and he sounded like a loving grandfather. And he spoke the truth to people. Like John Paul II, I think he understood that truth resonates in the human heart. And he was able to capture that and really express it in a beautiful, almost poetic way.
Well, Patrick Novecosky, we appreciate you taking time to join us tonight. Thank you for being here.
Great being with you, Jen.
You too.